Welcome to the Timescales interviews. I'm Grego, your host, and today I have a very special guest, indie comic creator. This right here is none other than Sean Ahrendt. Hi, Sean. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying yes. I have been hanging out with you and some of your friends digitally here
Hmm.
online for a good couple of months, and
Yeah.
I admire your talent, and this is
Well, thank you.
I'm honored to be able to talk to you about that because I believe that you have a little bit of education that can be shared with people that would like to do something such as you are. Now, you're located in on the California East Coast, right?
I'm in Jersey.
In Jersey.
Yeah,
Okay.
right
I
outside
would
of
I
Philly.
wouldn't yeah, I would have never known from the accent.
Yeah.
There's one particular accent in the United States that I can put my finger on almost instantly, and it's a New
Mhm.
Jersey one. You've got a good one, man. So,
We're pretty
um,
tough. Like my accent's a bit of a mixture because my folks were from the Bronx. So I got that wonky New York,
oh,
Northern New Jersey amalgam of an accent. So it makes me
oh,
stand out essentially from other people.
so so it's a little bit enhanced.
Yeah, yeah, I'll take that.
Okay. Listen, so that watchers and listeners know what we're going to be talking about,
Mhm.
Sean is creating an independent published comic, which he has written and is doing the art on. And that to me is something that is absolutely fascinating. And what I'm wondering, Sean, before we get started, so that people can get to know you just a little bit, can you tell us something about yourself that maybe very few people know outside of comics and art? Do you have any crazy secret hobbies like skydiving or stamp collecting or anything like that?
Nah, I'm pretty boring. Like I like watching movies and cartoons, like old school animation from the 80s and 90s. That's still comics and art within a degree, but I'm pretty boring other than that. Uh now I'm questioning myself. I'm like, I think I need an actual hobby outside of the illustration world, like so maybe I'll go skydiving next week and I'll let you know how that went.
All right, cool. Get some video or it didn't happen, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Listen, I'm wondering, for someone to create their own comic and
Mhm.
market it, which we're going to talk about the marketing here a little bit. What on earth would lead somebody up to doing something like that? Have you always loved comics?
Oh yeah, comic books ha- and like sci-fi and fantasy have always been what I've known. My father was had collected comic books from when he was a kid in the Bronx. He lived in a rough neighborhood, so it was escapism for him. So before I knew like Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream, I know Uncle Ben, with great power comes great responsibility. I was born in 81, so that time frame of the animation field and superhero cartoons like Spider-Man, His Amazing Friends, The Hulk, repeats of the FF, it was always around me. There's always comic books around me. It's just kind of what I knew. It helped me learn to read, helped me deal with my dyslexia as well, and it's just it's my life. It's what I've known, and I like going back to the old stuff because it's like a time machine. Because I remember where I was if I bought a certain issue. I remember going to the grocery store because we used to be able to buy comic books in grocery stores and drugstores as well, and 7-Elevens. So yeah, I comics is always been around me. And I don't like to like beat my chest like saying like I'm a comic historian. I just knew what I knew, like there'll be copies of Sal Buscema's Incredible Hulk run, or John Burns' FF run. It was just always around me, and the bug hit me very early on in life, and it was just entertaining to dive into these worlds of escapism. The unimaginable was possible because these writers and artists would create these worlds on these pages on these pieces of paper, and it was just fantastic being able to explore these worlds with my father, and it's a memory that I hold very cherishly. And I thank my father for giving me the spark to be able to do what I'm doing and where I'm going to be going in life.
Okay, very good. So I'm wondering with you, I also remember comics being in the grocery stores. I
Hmm.
think that if our parents spent a certain amount of money on groceries, we could go pick a comic for free. And I
Huh.
remember them, they were so popular that there were spinner racks at
Yes.
each of the grocery store
Hmm.
cash registers. Do you remember the spinner racks?
Oh, do I? Like my father also worked in Manhattan. He worked for Metropolitan Life. So we would go to all these awesome like comic book stores. Some would be dungeons in like a basement, some would be 3 stories high that we would have to go to. But spinner racks was always around, whether it be in the 7-Eleven comic book shops. Like I miss the old school spinner racks. And like every comic shop I go to that has a spinner rack, whether it be the classic ones or the new refurbished ones that they were pushing a few years ago, it's like that's a comic shop. Like you just
Yeah.
grab it off, you'd be able to look at it, and yeah, oh man, like I hate to say like I'm old school, like when my friends talk about comic books and when they got into it, I was already years deep into it. Granted, I was probably like 6 or 7 with different runs, but like I already knew about like Todd McFarlane's Hulk run or Rob Liefeld doing What If #7. And meanwhile, they were just getting X Force #4, which that's when those guys were like blowing up successfully as illustrators and businessmen. And then we got Image a few months later on, Image Comics, I should say.
Wow. Have you ever considered writing a history book of comics?
Not till now, but I
Because
might.
I
Sounds
think
like
you probably could.
yeah, I have great conversations with Kayla, one of my co-hosts on Appreciating Comic Book Art with Joel Sontag, and she's kind
Mhm.
of like how I was brought up. Like her father is into comics, and he was brought up. So she's a few years younger than me and Joey, but like her stories and mine like really kind of collide as far as this is what we were brought up on. Like we have real great in-depth conversations about it, and it's really refreshing because she's a wealth of knowledge herself. And like sometimes I feel like I'm the only one, because people are into what they're
Right.
into. They grew up on what they grew up at a certain time, but like I was able to. I I read Fantastic Four 18 first from my dad because I'm a Super Scroll fan. And I already knew Spider-Man's origin because of the cartoons. So I read Amazing Fantasy maybe next, but like that's how deep into it. And I was like 6 or 7 at the time. But that's just I was able to because my dad had that collection of comics, minus the first 6 Incredible Hulks. He had every single Marvel comic book, a good portion of DC, but he really didn't start DC till like once he got what he needed Marvel wise, and he needed something else to kind of start collecting.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned appreciating comic book art.
Hmm.
For people that may not be familiar with that, that's probably the first place I ever ran into you, Sean.
Hmm.
And I have had the opportunity of meeting and interviewing Joe M. Sontag, and
Hmm.
I will be meeting Kayla again, or not again for the first time. Uh, Pretty soon here, maybe in the next couple of weeks. And that program right there, I highly recommend.
Hmm.
Appreciating comic book art, and it's on Joe M. Sontag's channel. Definitely, everyone check that out. Now, we're going to put a link to it down below.
Oh,
So it'll
cool,
be
cool.
easy if you're watching this interview on YouTube, go down below. If you're listening to this interview on audio, go over to the YouTube version and go down to the description, and you will be able to find the link for Joe M. Sontag's Appreciating Comic Book Art. Now, that's funny what you said about the spinner racks because I didn't know. I remember the spinner racks from being in the 70s, and I did not know how long that they continued. And just a few days ago, there was a live streaming comic book channel or panel on YouTube where somebody had spinner racks behind them in
Hmm.
their home recording studio. I'm thinking, wow, then now that right there, that's hardcore. And
Oh yeah.
that's got to be some kind of a collector that they've got a spinner rack right there behind them. So that being said, are you a collector? I think that you probably are. Tell us about your comic collection.
Oh yeah. Like I wow. My my first series collecting was Transformers and then G.I. Joe. and then Spider-Man. But I was heavily into all the Spider-Man titles, the Fantastic Four, Incredible Hulk, X-Men, and all their many other spin-offs. The Batman, Supermans, the Teen Titans. Oh my God, there's just so much. I got boxes and boxes in storage. Like sometimes I'll walk into a comic book shop. I'm like, I got more than this. But
Okay.
I'm more,
Oh, really?
yeah, and I'm more. I'm at maybe because I'm old and I'm stuck in my ways, but like I like the old stuff. I like what I grew up on. Yeah, there's some very talented illustrators and talented writers out there now, but nothing's really piquing my interest as much as like going back to like a Tom Grummett like Teen Titans book, or going to again like George John Burns X-Men run, or Fantastic Four, or Gil Kane on Amazing Spider-Man being inked by John Romita Sr. Like I like what I like, and I'd rather read the older stuff or dive into the older art because that's just what inspires me. I stopped collecting back in 2020 after my father passed because that was kind of our hobby, and I just kind of needed a break. But now I'm more collecting like independent creators, um, crowdfunding creators, just because there's a lot of great up and coming talent that's out there that people really need to see, and I'll support what I like the best I can, financially speaking, because it does get pricey, and I understand that. But yeah, if we're talking about like comic books, like I'll it's all old school for me. Like Image comic books, I had everything. Like even even Tribe #1. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. You know.
Okay, awesome. All right, now I want to talk to you about your comic book, Type
Okay.
One,
Mhm.
and I'm particularly interested in the title, why it's called Type One. But before we get into that, was there, do you recall the point when you decided I'm going to create my own comic book? Did you just wake up one morning and have one of those early morning, half asleep, great ideas that I'm going to create my own comic book? Or was it something that you had been thinking about over time? And did you reach a point where you finally said, okay, now, no, I really am going to create my own comic book? Where did this start?
This is going to be a very long-winded question, but I love talking
Go for
about
it, man.
this. So again,
Okay.
comic books and cartoons was always around me, and I always drew, always created my new characters. Yeah, they would be similarities of like this guy from this cartoon or this book, but I was a kid with, and I was inspired. In December of 1992, we had a local comic book convention in my hometown of Saddlebrook, New Jersey. Shout out to the Brook, where Dave Cockrum was the guest artist. And Dave Cockrum, for those that don't know, he is a famous X-Men artist, Marvel comic book artist. He co-created Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler. So if you ever read Giant Size X-Men 1, Dave was the artist. So I was 11 years old, and there was an art contest for the show, and I had family in from out of town. I had my aunt and cousin come in from Mexico, and I just had relatives around. And my brother-in-law, who my sister was dating at the time, he was in the comic books and he drew, and he was doing something for the contest. And I just created my own character, and it was just what I loved at the time. Like it was, yeah, it's basically every like all of the Image guy stuff and all like the animated stuff from the 80s that I was really into, like Captain Powers, Spiral Zone, Centurions, Bionic Six, Silverhawks, mixed in with like Die Hard from Youngblood and like Heatwave from Cyberforce. And I created this character called, he was supposed to be Straith, but I'm dyslexic and I can't spell. So it came out Streez. How that came to be, I don't know. I was 11 years old, but I was proud of this
Right.
drawing and this character that I created. And before submitting it to the contest, I met Dave Cockrum. I showed him the picture, and he was such a gentleman, such a gentleman. He was so nice. He said nice things about the drawing, even though it was very lackluster. And he liked the name Strees, so I'm like sticking with that. And I got to sit behind his table and talk to him before anything else. And I would go back and forth just hanging out because I'm like, I'm with a comic book artist. Like the guy draws X-Men. And at that time, the X-Men was the top of the heap of the hill, selling
Hmm.
millions of comic books. The cartoon, well, the cartoon showed off in Halloween of '92, but didn't really debut until January of '93. So it was out there. The excitement for X-Men was there. So sitting with like a godfather of the X-Men universe was just made my day. And his wife gave me my real first art lesson about like how the hand should go so far down between the hip and the knee just for like figure work. And I've always remembered that. And it was just such a great experience being that young that it helped spark the bug to be a creator, wanting to create comic books. And I've always made my own characters, and Strees was always in my bag of tricks, if you will. I would revamp him every so often, put him away. He would be a main character, a secondary character, but he was always there. And then fast forward to 1995, December 4th, 1995 is when I got sick. I know the date because of my sister's birthday, or when I got sick and the virus that made me a type 1 diabetic. And that following
Oh,
spring, I was in one of my art classes. Mrs. Stoss, shout out to you. Thank you for all your guidance. I was like, I had seen this show previously, and this is very selfish, that Mario Lopez did on NBC. It was kind of like Choose Your Adventure show where teens would kind of choose what they would want to do. They would take them to whatever it would be. And this one particular one, the kid won the opportunity to be flown out to Extreme Studios in California and meet Rob Liefeld. Rob, who created Cable, Deadpool, Domino, X Force, started Image Comics, one of my heroes. I was like, I want to meet Rob Liefeld. And again, I was young. I was a child. I was a teenager. I didn't know better. So I'm like, I'm just gonna make Strees me, a diabetic, because they say write what you know. Now, was I gonna write about me sneaking out of my house to visit my girlfriend later that night? No, because that would be snitching on myself, and snitches get stitches. So I'm like, I'm just gonna make him a diabetic superhero. And I wrote a letter to Make a Wish. And I wrote the letter to Make a Wish and I gave it to my doctor, Dr. Wiesen, and I handed it to him. And he's like, what's this? I'm like, it's my wish. Like, what do you mean, what's this? He's like, your what? I'm like, it's my wish. And once he put that in like together, like the Make a Wish and whatever, he's like, that's not how this goes. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm showing Aaron. It's all right there. Like it's in the note. Like this is how it goes. Well, what once to meet Rob Liefeld, because I wanted Rob to draw Strees with Bad Rock or an extreme character. Just meet Rob, because like that was like my Yoda to a degree, or my Obi-Wan. And once I figured out that wasn't the way it went, I'm like, oh, okay. But Strees was always that. It was always me, always dealing with what I dealt and so many deal with, just to give it a relatable aspect, like how Daredevil's blind. It's part of the story. It's part of who he is. But there's many more facets to the world that makes Matt Murdock Matt Murdock. So fast forward to summer 2019. Yeah, I was down in Florida for MegaCon, and our convention agent had gotten a bunch of us a condo to stay at while we were at the show for the week. And I just decided to draw streaks on my iPad. I got a new iPad Pro. I'm like, let's figure this out, do a little testing. And I'm like, oh, cool, cool. This is great. Not really thinking anything of it because I was trying to figure out other projects to work on for the upcoming fall and winter. Oh, forgive me. And fast forward, that was in May of 2019. And then that July, her and I, we threw our own comic book convention down in Lewis, Delaware, called Geeks at the Beach.
really?
The first comic book
Nice.
convention in the first town of the country, in the first state of the country. So it worked out. And
Awesome.
we partnered up with an animal shelter. So if you came to the show and you donated, whether it be food, toys, anything animal related, you got it in cheap. You got it a little bit cheaper. No, it wasn't an arm and a leg convention like New York, but you saved a couple bucks. So that did well, and we built up in a mass amount of product to give to the animal shelter afterwards. And they were kind of very hard to get a hold of, like coming up, leading up to the convention, trying to work with them, just whatever. It was a hassle. And about a day or so after the show, we dropped off all of what we got to one of the organized people at a local hotel, I guess where she worked. And one of the people working at the hotel went to get her. She couldn't be bothered. Like the walls were paper thin, so I could hear where she was, and she was just kind of rude about it, like her tone. They're like, "This is who they are. They got this." She's like, "Tell them to leave it there." And I'm a bit of a you gotta be proper, at least a thank you.
Right. Right.
Nothing. She didn't have the audacity to even come out and grab it. So I was like, "You're welcome," and we dipped out. We got lunch, and I'm like, we were talking about what would have been for the next year, what for 2020. That didn't happen. We all know why. But I'm like, since this is me being selfish, I'm like, since this is my convention too, let's do something for JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, for the Delaware chapter. Let's reach out to them. Let's make them involved. I'll do a poster. They could keep the file. They can they make whatever money off the prints. All goes to them to help out with kids because insulin's not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
We reached out to them. They loved the idea. We were sparking conversations, and then that led to me showing off the new character design to diabetes groups on Facebook because people were sharing on Facebook, like, I'm a diabetic, I plant flowers, I do this, this is what I do in my profession or my spare time. I'm like, cool, I do illustration and comic books. This is my character Strees. This is the spiel. And people loved it. I got such an overwhelming abundance of really positive things from parents that showed their kids the image that loved the idea. And then I got banned from the sites because they thought I was like peddling. I'm like, no, I'm just showing you what I do. Like ban those people, ban Mrs. Flowers, please. But so that really sparked it all, where I put everything I was working on the side burner, shuffled off my old notes from when I was a kid to a teenager to a young adult, and kind of took the best of everything. I added it in. There's an uncle nephew aspect to it. I'm an uncle. I love my niece and nephew. They're great. They go home. They're adults. It's amazing. So I'm like, there's a more to make it more real, so people can relate to as being a caregiver to someone. And then I threw in like Mayan and Aztec lore, people commonly know as ancient aliens, just to kind of sell it better. And you could get a little more broad, a little more out there, and bring a fantastical element to it. So I had worked on type one, getting it to in the proper eyes, and then when lockdown happened, our contact left, and I reached out to them saying, "Hey, what I will do Zoom calls like this, or however you could set up so I'll help teach kids how to draw, entertain them." Because at the time, parents had to work. If they were working, they were locked up in the house. Like, I'm sure they were going through whatever they were going to, trying to do their job and be a parent. And that's a tough job itself, being a parent. And the person, the person that took over for our contact was kind of rude, was like, this person left and we don't have the funds for this. I'm like, you don't have the funds for this. I'm doing this for free on my own time. I just want to teach kids how to draw. Like, I'm locked
Right.
up myself, like, I want to draw. I want to tell people about my comic book. So I'm like, oh, boo hoo. And then the following year, I put out a preview edition of Type One. I'm sorry if you can't see the glare.
There we go.
It's
Nice.
the first 15 pages in black and white. It's called it's an Ashcan, and just to set up the world that of Strees, my character, is living in. And I had a friend that I knew through the Rob Liefeld message board from almost 20 years ago reach out to me. He's like, I love what you're doing, brother. He's like, I have a close friend who is associated with JDRF. I'm like, oh, that again? But the Illinois chapter. I'm like, okay, cool, because it's something else. Met the contact, and we just kind of talked, and it was slow progressing, but opened my world to many amazing people that really believe in this project, and has gotten me to the point where it is now about getting it into the hands of the kids. It's been a long
Okay.
journey, but we're getting there, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
A- Absolutely awesome. Now, you mentioned at age 14 you got a virus and
Mhm.
and I guess was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And
Yeah.
that's something that I had always thought that it was type 1 was from birth. And I did have a good friend that had type 1. He was
Hmm.
a coworker. And I have pre-diabetes. So
Okay.
I've got to work on my diet and
Yeah.
exercise. It started during lockdown because my wife and I quit going to restaurants
Hmm.
and started making food at home and found out you can make way better food for way cheaper at your
Right.
house in California than going
Hmm.
out to a bunch of restaurants. So I ended up getting overweight and not exercising enough and ended up with pre-diabetes. But my friend that had type 1, um, Brad, ironically, was from New Jersey and had the Jersey accent.
Nice.
And we yeah. So we used to work at a restaurant in the morning where due to budgets they would short staff you. So it would be just him and me. And we would start out really early in the morning and we had to prep a really large amount of food.
Hmm.
And Brad and I, we got to be really good friends because of being coworkers, and
Yeah.
we would hang around after work some of the time together, burn a little bit every once in a while. But what
Nice.
happened one morning is I came to work not feeling well because I think I'd stayed up all night watching TV. And I remember telling him that I don't feel up to speed today. And we had a ton of work that we had to do because there had been a lettuce shortage. I don't know why, but we had to order this just ass load of lettuce,
Right.
and we only had a limited amount of storage space, and it filled up the whole refrigerator where you couldn't even get inside the walk-in cooler because of the walls of lettuce. And I remember screwing around with Brad. I said, "Man, because he had to prep the lettuce." I said, Using a Hobart slicer, okay?"
Okay.
And I remember messing with him, and I said, "Man, did you see that wall of lettuce in there?" I said, "You're gonna have to chew your way through that just to be able to get in the cooler." I was just messing with him, and it kind of pissed him off. And he said, "Look, I'm gonna tell you something." He said, "You want to complain about you feeling tired?" He said, you know what's coming." He
Yeah.
put me in my place. He said, "Yeah." He said, you're right, man." And probably used some more colorful language and said,
Sure.
"Yeah, I'm gonna have to chew my way through that lettuce." But he said, "Tell you what, you think you feel bad? I'm sick every day." He
Yeah.
said, "I am always sick because I've got type 1 diabetes." And I knew it. We talked about it. I saw him doing his insulin injections and what have you. He always had to have boxes of candy to regulate. And he said, I said, "Do you feel bad all the time?" And he goes, "Well, not all the time." He said, "But it's like having a monster behind you that
Yeah.
is always going to be chasing you, always going to be chasing you, and you're just not quite sure that you're always going to be able to stay ahead." And
Right.
he said, he goes, "Greg, I am sick every day of my life." And he said, "And if you decided to stay up all night and watch TV, that's your problem, and I don't want to hear it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, so sorry." And that is something that that is something that I've never forgotten about.
Hmm.
And For people that I think most people out there know what type 1 diabetes is. It's something that once you have it, it does not go away and has to be treated constantly. Am I correct?
Yeah. Our pancreases are essentially dead or don't produce enough insulin for our body to regulate the incoming sugar and carbs that come in
Hmm.
our body. So I like to tell everybody I got a zombie in my lower back. So like
Hmm.
my pancreas is a zombie. So yeah, that's why we take the synthetic insulin. That's why we have to shoot up and monitor our levels just so we don't get too high or even the lows. The lows are scary. The lows is I like to tell people there's times where I'm dropping like this morning, for instance, like it's 4:30 in the morning. I got the sweats. I got the shakes. The outer body experience. It's almost like I'm feeling like I can't breathe, but I'm breathing. and it's like it's fight or flight. It's like, oh my god, I need to get honey, or I need to get orange juice or some type of carbohydrate to keep it balanced. And our for me personally, my mind gets very loopy, and it's just trying to survive, and that happens way more often than I like, the bottoming out part. And then you get high because you gotta wait for it to regulate, and that I'm gonna curse. That kicks your ass, like that really takes its
Mhm.
toll, like emotion, like physically, emotionally. Like there's times on streams, if you see I'm kind of like have like a not really into it, it's because I'm having a bad day with my diabetes, and I'm
Okay.
just trying to be there, and I'm dealing with all the arthritis in my body, the pains, and I'm doing my best to give an entertaining show without being rude, but nobody knows that because it's nothing I really share. Like it's just how it is,
Mhm.
and I feel bad, but I really shouldn't. But yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks. Like it sucks. But I'm glad I was so young when I got sick and diagnosed. If I were now, I don't know if I would be able to do it, to be honest with you, but it's a part of my life. Like I'm 42 now. I was
Okay.
14 when I got sick and then diagnosed. So you do the math, it's longer than anything else. So yeah,
Right.
it's tough. Like I look at kids and I'm like, you guys are soldiers, you guys are superheroes, like God bless you all. Like very inspiring, very inspiring.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I can
Awesome.
understand where your
That
friend was
thanks.
coming from with
You
that.
do.
He probably had a
Yeah.
bad morning himself and probably a little testy. And then when people do the whole diabetes, I like a diabetes joke myself, but people don't know. Like it is a war. We're literally trying to fight to stay alive, and we're doing
Mhm.
our best. And there's just times that it just gets to us, mentally, or we're just having a bad day. And on behalf of all my
Right.
diabetic brother and sister, and I apologize for our testiness.
All right, Sean. Thanks for being willing to talk about that.
Yes,
Like I told you before we started recording, I don't ask people about medical things unless
right.
they bring it up. And
Hmm.
since you did mention it, thank you for the opportunity of getting a little bit of insight from you about that.
No,
Okay.
no.
Now, so moving on, let's
Yes.
get to type one. Type
Hmm.
one, for people watching and listening, type one is Sean's comic. We have now heard his backstory, and we're going to talk about his comic. It is one that he has written and is illustrating, and I'm wondering what the process of the creation is like. And then after that, we're going to get to the tools that you use, and
Hmm.
then how you're marketing it, which is using crowdsourcing, from what I
Yeah.
understand. So
Yeah.
where would you like to start? Oh, one thing I almost
Mhm.
missed this. You mentioned a mentor. You mentioned a teacher that you
Yes.
thanked.
Yes.
And that is a question that I always like to ask people is when they first realized that they had a desire or talent in any area of arts and performing arts, was there somebody that propped them up and mentored them and said, "Hey, you're really good at this and you need to pursue it." You mentioned a mentor. Would you mind telling us
Sure. Yeah,
about that?
I've been very blessed to have a handful of art teachers in grammar school to high school. First was Mr. Richard Fuchs, and then Mrs. Stoss in high school, and they all of them saw my love for creating, all my a little bit advanced in art, as opposed where some friends were drawing stick figures. I was drawing Darth Vader. So
Hmm.
so they always guided me and taught me better routes to take my creative outlets. And back then comic books were kind of looked frowned upon, like as being like not serious as an artist. And I've had some teachers that were in that mind frame, but not them. They love what I did. They still do. I'm still in contact with them on Facebook, and it's they definitely helped me go in a straight and narrow path as far as where and how I wanted to be in my life career wise. So I thank them all the time. And like I'll message them and I'm like, I gotta thank you again. They're like, you just did like 6 months
Nice.
ago. I'm like, I would have done it 4 months ago, but I didn't want to bother you, you know. But yeah, I've been very blessed to have many amazing artistic teachers. And one more teacher was Mr. B. Yeah, Mr. B. Cannot thank him enough. So just wanted to say thank you, Mr. B.
Okay, awesome. So the mentorship was there for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So all right. So with comics, I've never created a comic. I might like to someday, but the
Should.
problem is I'm not a very good writer and I'm not a very good artist. So so I've got a couple of hurdles to overcome first. But from what I've seen with comics, um I am not a comic collector.
Okay.
I have read comics since I was a kid. I am nowhere near as deep as you and your friends are off into this, okay?
Okay.
And I'm not gonna claim to be anywhere close. Um, but I enjoyed comics very much as a kid. I remember the little advertisements in the back where you could mail off, you could tape a dime to
Right.
the coupon and like mail it off and order something crazy that either didn't work or whatever when you actually finally got it. But I remember the fantasy of the advertisements and the things that you could order in the back, and of course the stories. Incredible Hulk was one of them because I
Nice.
actually got to meet Lou Ferrigno at
Oh
Universal
wow.
Studios. When I was a kid, yeah, my grandmother worked there, so we got to meet some people such as Lou Ferrigno and Peter Falk and a whole bunch of other people. But after
That's
meeting
awesome.
him, I started reading the Incredible Hulk
Mm-hmm.
because my brother and I, after seeing his stage show at Universal Studios, my brother and I, we would play Incredible Hulk. And
Right.
we were Incredible Hulk. And what taught us how to play and be Incredible Hulk was reading the Incredible Hulk comics. So that's where I had gotten started. But today I will read Doctor Who comics that come
Okay.
out because, as you probably have noticed, I'm a fan
Mm-hmm.
of Doctor Who, that crazy British
Doctor Who's
sci-fi
awesome.
drama series.
Yeah.
You like it?
I,
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
I'm a few seasons behind, but I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to do a talk about Doctor Who one of these days because I would like to hear that. But um, it's my understanding that with comics there is a writer typically. I've interviewed a couple of comic book writers.
Mm-hmm.
One of them recently was Eddie Robson, who
Okay.
has done the writing for a huge amount of Doctor Who comics and magazines. And then there is someone that does I don't want to get the terminology wrong, even though as many times as I've heard it, I should know what it is. The illustrations or the
Penciling.
cells or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the paintings.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
am I correct that am I correct that you are more unique in that with your comic type
Yeah.
one, where you have written it and illustrated, painted, art, done the art cells?
I wouldn't say I'm unique in that aspect. I would just say I'm very heavy-handed in the creative control of things, and I want it done my way or the highway because of this particular project and what it really means to me. Uh, Essentially, there's a writer, there's a penciler, an inker, and a colorist. Then you got a letterer who puts the
Okay, the
balloons
four.
on. Yeah. So, but these days, the penciler can be the inker, or the writer could be the colorist as well. Like there's many different facets and routes people can go. But normally back in the day, there was an editor who oversaw everything to make sure the schedules were being in place, the story was making sense and cohesive and following along. But as always, writer, penciler, inker, colorist. And that was essentially the main catalog of how things went. But now these days, writers can draw the comic books or the artists can write their own comic books. Like I don't claim to be writing Shakespeare or anything brilliant. Like I'm writing a fun action adventure tale to for escapism and what
Hmm.
I was inspired by when I was younger. Have I picked up tips reading comic books throughout the years from my favorite writers? Yes, and I'm implementing that into my storytelling of how I tell stories. So I learned from them, but it was always I'm going to do it my way. A buddy of
Right,
mine
right.
who my friend Rob, he he created Deadpool, Cable, Image. He gave me the best advice years ago where he's like, Sean, you just got to do it. Because if you're not going to do it, nobody's going to do it for you. So you just got to do it. I'm like, that's the best advice, Rob. Thank you, brother. Love you. So it's just, I'm just doing it. You know,
Okay.
it's nothing really where I'm sitting down like, I am the best. Well, sometimes, but you know, it's just going that way. And you know, I had a
Okay.
lot of friends who were writers, and they helped me stay on the the path I should be on. Mark Pulton, who's one of my best friends, and he's an accomplished creator writer himself. He's my editor, so he makes sure everything is spelt properly because I'm dyslexic and I really don't know how to spell the words they should be. So
Mhm.
get an editor. Always get
Okay.
it.
Get an editor. I was gonna ask about that. And as a matter of fact, I think I saw Mark Polton yesterday
Yeah,
online. I think he was in the live stream. Okay.
yeah.
Now, do you consider your type one to be a comic or is it a graphic novel?
Oh, it's a comic book. Yeah, yeah. Uh,
It's a comic book.
I
Okay.
think that personally, I think the term graphic novel got a little swayed when Hollywood was coming around because I remember watching the behind the scenes documentary of Daredevil with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. And Jennifer Gardner was like, when I got the graphic novel, I'm like, ah. And she was talking about a Frank Miller comic book, like a floppy. I'm like, ah, this is the end of it. But where graphic novel was a prestige format of a comic book, where it might have maybe a little oversized, better paper, better coloring. So while the prestigeness of what a graphic novel really was, people are just calling that graphic novels because yes, it is a graphic novel because of the pictures and the words, but I'm making you a comic book. I'm making you a funny book. I'm making you entertaining. You know, like I'm not trying to come up anything smarter than I'm really not. But I'm just trying to entertain you and give you a good, fun ride while telling you what myself and other people deal with to make it
Okay.
relatable.
That Okay, that's funny. Comic book versus graphic novel.
Yeah.
And it's only one more syllable.
Right.
Or is it two? But yeah, it reminds me of a George Carlin joke where he said, "How come we're adding all these extra syllables to everything just to make them sound fancier than what
Hmm,
they are?" But
hmm.
okay, so we've established that it's a comic book,
Yeah.
and I want to jump into the tools that a person would need to do what you're doing, and then the part that I find extremely interesting is the marketing
Hmm.
and the fundraising of it. So, as far as the let's say somebody out there uh is watching or listening to this because of the fact that they have this dream or goal of creating their own comic book. It
Hmm.
may have been an idea that they had since they were 11, or it may have been an idea that they just came up with here recently. They might not have started it yet. Maybe they finished it. Maybe they finished the story, or maybe they finished only the art. And what I'm wondering is, can you tell us where to start with tools?
Sure.
Do you need to have software? Can you just do it with pen and paper, which I don't think a lot of writers use just pen and paper anymore. What
Essentially
are
all
the
you need
tools?
is a pencil and a paper just to start creating,
Really?
just to start drawing. Get yourself an eraser. Don't be afraid to erase. We all make mistakes, and if you think you did it okay the first time, you could do it again and make it better. That's all you need to start off with, just to practice, just to get your fundamentals, just so you work out all the kinks. And yes, there's software that people do digital artwork where I'm a combination, a hybrid type of artist. I like drawing my stuff out in pen on pieces of paper just to kind of get the feel
Oh,
of it.
nice.
This is just a sketch. I consider this just a sketch, and it's not perfect, but then I'll scan it into my computer, resize it to whatever the 11 by 17 format, because a comic book is 11 by 17 that we draw on, but inside the book, the frame is 10 by 15. So that's the precise size that we should be drawing on, that it doesn't get cut off from printing. But I'll either
You
draw it
said
out.
10 by 15? 10,
Yeah,
10 by 15?
yeah,
Okay, so you have to
yeah.
stick with that size format.
Yeah, that's what we prominently used drawing wise. And some people use smaller because with computers you could like resize things like in Photoshop
Mhm.
just to fit the template because the template's small. Like this is the template. So trying to put 11 by 17 or 10 by 15 into this, you know?
Here, turn that a little bit. Turn it a little bit. And that here, let me blow up your screen. That way people can see this better. Okay,
So this is
very
the
good.
size of a
Nice.
comic book. If you can see like comparison of my hand to 11 by 17. I don't have one around me. I'm sorry. It's over there, very far away. But so what I do is I scan it in my computer. I either redraw it on my Cintiq, which is a big uh touch tablet monitor that it's just like me drawing on my big computer right here, or I draw it on my iPad because I could be on the go with my iPad, and then I flush things out, and then I'll either finish it in Clip Studio Paint, or I'll print it out on Blue Line or any color because it really doesn't matter anymore, and then I'll draw over what I have printed to make an original piece of art, whether I could use pencil or different markers and pens and ink just to give it the black and white aspect of it. And then we scan it and do
Okay.
cleanup in the computer. But yeah, like all you need is paper and pencil.
Okay. Okay, awesome. So the investment is minimal. It sounds like
Yeah,
with the paper and a pencil, you can get started for under $1 or
you can.
free if you just go to the library. I think they'll give you a pencil and paper
Yeah,
at any public library. So,
yeah.
what did you say before the tablet? What was the term you used to describe the table?
Oh,
The
the
bef
Cintiq. The Cintiq
yes,
was
Cintiq.
yeah,
What is
Cintiq.
that?
It's like think like a big iPad, if you will, but like you just draw on it. I can't
Cintiq.
Cintiq,
Okay.
Cintiq, I think. It's from Wacom.
CINTIQ.
Wacom makes it, WACOM, and that's kind of like
Hmm.
the Lexus of digital drawing tablets, if you will. There's other companies that make less money version of them, and they're all getting better year by year, month by month. So you don't have to really invest that much money, maybe a couple $100. This one was refurbished for like over $1,000. Originally, it went for like maybe three. I don't know, but it was a while ago when I got it. But yeah, so I'll either draw in it, flesh what I want out, proper size, figure out my kinks. There's some cheating in there where I have like perspective rulers and to make things straight and just get everything set where I need to be. Because for me personally, taking an original 11 by 17 blank piece of paper is very daunting. And just to try to figure
Hmm.
everything out. And since this is a time sensitive aspect of the arts, I just like drawing things out smaller just to figure out the proportions. It's not pretty, it's very crude, but I get to make it clean up and artsy fartsy once I get to the final phases, whether I'm digitally inking it or uh traditionally inking it on paper with my inking tools.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So, once a person has gotten to this point, they have the tools that they need. Let's say, um, middle ground, maybe they've invested a couple of $100
Yeah,
in the tools that you've described, and they're getting down to beginning the creative process. Let's say it's somebody that is self-taught,
yeah.
somebody that has never taken a writing class in school
Hmm.
formally at all, and somebody, I think most schools do teach art, but here
Yeah,
in America, it's not,
it's
in
unfortunate.
public
Yeah,
schools, it's not real, it's not very intensive. They
yeah,
may call it art, but it doesn't get deeply into art.
yeah.
Um, so let's say somebody has not taken art classes. So
Hmm.
no writing, no art classes, but they have the desire and they have the tools, even be
Yeah,
it just a pencil and a piece of paper.
yeah.
It, is that okay?
Sure.
Is that you don't
Sure.
have, so you don't wouldn't have to have formal education
No,
for
well,
someone to.
no, because you could just learn by looking at stuff. That's how I was. I would look at a drawing, I would try to replicate it and look at books. But then I would go to comic conventions and ask artists. But now we have YouTube. And
Yeah.
YouTube, there's a plethora of amount of information out there from phenomenal
Mhm.
artists that have been in the game 30 plus years to even upcoming illustrators. You could just type in how to draw comics, uh, how to draw comic books. Uh, a friend of mine, uh, Clayton, Clayton Barton, he has a phenomenal illustrating class for aspiring illustrators and artists that he teaches proportions, different parts of the body, and he he's got a great YouTube channel and classes you could also purchase, which is more in depth for the more advanced. But yeah, you look up how to draw comic books or how to create comic books or how to write just put in how to on YouTube or Google, and you will find something that's up your alley. And there's so many out there that you could just learn from for free. All you need is the
Okay.
internet. So you can go to the library if you have, or you just go on your phone, So the information's out there, and it's a lot easier than it was like say 30 years ago, where we would have to go to Wizard magazine, which was a comic book magazine that was like the price guide of comic books, but they would do interviews with artists and then like how-to segments, but then there was also like the George Bridgman books to teach you how to draw, or the Loomis books, or what have you, or what we like to call the Bible of the comic books, How to Draw Comic Books the Marvel Way by John Buscema. And that's what we had. And you know what? To this day, the fundamentals and basics are there. That's pretty much what you need, because everything's cylinders and shapes and lines and weights to make a 3D form in a two-dimensional platform with paper. So I would just suggest get How to Draw Comic Books the Marvel Way and look up How to Draw Comic Books by Clayton Barton on YouTube. So there's
Okay.
many comic book artists that teach.
Okay. Well, that's ironic that you should mention YouTube because that's exactly where we're going to put this video. And so somebody seeing it would already be on YouTube.
Nice, nice, nice.
So, okay. All right, Sean, I got it. A final thing here that I want to ask you, and that's about the marketing.
Okay,
Well, actually, two more things. I want to ask you about the shipping also,
sure.
which that should be very brief because there's only a few shipping methods of choice here in the U.S.
Yeah.
On the marketing,
Hmm.
now when I started doing this interview series of shared traits of people in arts and performing arts, and then all of a sudden went down this total rabbit hole of comics, something that I never expected. I think the person I have to blame for that is Jay over at Diabolical
Jay Doyle?
Studios. Jay Doyle,
That's my
yes.
brother. That's my guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
God bless Jay. I
yeah,
love Jay. Jay's the best.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to blame him and the YouTube algorithm because
Okay.
one night I was sitting there just on YouTube and I saw his show when it was beginning and I'm like what? And the more of that content that I started to watch, it started to recommend other channels.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I ran in to Joe M. Sontag,
Mm-hmm.
you, Kayla,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Bancroft down there in
Bancroft.
Australia, and
Yep,
the
yep.
bunch of other really cool
Mm-hmm.
people. And it was addicting to me because the reason that I started watching is I wanted to know basically how are these people raising this much money for
Mm-hmm.
their self-made comics. And there's been a bunch of money raised,
Yeah.
yourself included. I haven't checked. I haven't been watching to see how much you're raising, but at some point I do remember looking at it and thinking, "Wow, that's pretty impressive." So,
Thank you.
for yeah, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, for somebody that has gone through these steps that you have described,
Mm-hmm.
and we've reached this point, what is the best way of marketing? Okay, now I do know that there is GoFundMe, but I
Yeah.
don't know if anybody is starting comics on there anymore. And then I know that there's Indiegogo,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm vaguely familiar with. I've actually purchased some works from people on there.
Nice.
And then there is fundmycomic.com,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that I've bought some works from people on there too. Um, Would you recommend all three of those platforms, or do you have a favorite? What's the best way for somebody that has finished their work to get as much as money as fast as they can to get this printed and shipped to the buyers?
Well, first, since we live in a digital world where everything is on demand and like people want the now and you watch the YouTube videos, get yourself out there, tell people about your product, tell them about you. People buy into the person a lot more than what they do the product, unfortunately, where it may be dope art, a dope story, but they might like you a little bit more than comic books. They might not be a comic book or into comic books, but they like you. They want to help you and support you build your dream. So I would suggest start a YouTube channel, talk about what you like. If you like comic books, talk about the comic books. If you like cartoons, talk about toys. It's your world, build it. And then start talking about your comic book or the property you're creating. So you build up a following, you build up that audience, and then you share on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I don't know any other more social medias because I am kind of old and stuck in my ways. But you want to build that excitement for the hype for your product before you launch it, whether it be Indiegogo, Fund My Comic, which is relatively new. Shout out to Luke Stone for and his friends for creating that. And then, or if you want to do Kickstarter, like they seem to work differently. Like Kickstarter might seem more for like cheesecake type of stuff, but it's still an audience. Where Indiegogo
Mhm.
seems like, let's say, more not serious, but more for comic books or independents. But there's a market for everything everywhere. You just got to kind of find your spot in it and try to like Rob Liefeld says, take the shot. You just got to kind of do it, because nobody else is going to do it for you. But I say go where you want, like make as much money as you can wherever you can. Like who's to stop you? Who's to tell you no to try to put bread on your table? Like
Hey,
let's be honest.
there you go.
You
There you
know,
go. And I
insulin
I
ain't
got to
cheap.
tell you, man, you're right. I got to tell you, I love how you say Twitter. Twitter.
Twitter.
That is a New Jersey, that is a New Jersey pronunciation of
I'll
Twitter
take
right there if I have ever heard one. Twitter. I want to make
Twitter.
that my ringtone.
All right, let me know. We'll make it happen.
All right.
Anything for you. Anything for you.
All right, Sean. So, when you get to the point of shipping, how are you going to do that? Are you going to use postal service, UPS? What if somebody orders from you in Germany?
Mm-hmm.
How in the international shipping is really
Well,
expensive.
real even to Canada
So
is really expensive, and they're just like right there. Like
yeah, exactly.
it's
What's up with that? It's so close.
I don't know.
Uh,
I'm not that
yeah,
smart. But with
yeah.
shipping, we okay, for your comics or your graphic novels, whatever, always put your comics in bags and boards so they can be protected and tape them. Put tape on them so they don't slip out. And what we use is something called Gemini mailers. They're essentially cardboard boxes that you fold into and you can put a certain amount of comic books into, like roughly like six or so without pushing it, depending on the size of each book. Like this one, I could probably put like six or seven. Where if it was a trade paperback, which is a little bit thicker, maybe about like two or three sizes of a comic books, you could put like two without damaging it. And we like to put in extra perks like stickers and trading cards, and just to say like thank you for people spending your hard-earned money for believing in us. And so we'll
Mhm.
tape up those boxes and we'll send them to the post office or UPS. Um, Stamps.com. I suggest stamps.com. You make an account, you type in you put the people's addresses in, you weigh the book, and then it calculates everything for you and it prints out a sticker. You slap it on the sticker onto your mailer, and then when you put it to the post office or UPS, it's already kind of paid for. So it's a little bit less work on your end, but it makes it easier to get it in the people's hands. But always, or
Okay,
you know
cool.
what, wrap the comic in even bubble wrap or some sort of stuff, like if it's a lot of stuff, or if going overseas, because if you're traveling, like that stuff's getting bounced around, and just to help it out, like I would suggest maybe doing bubble wrap with the comic books as well.
Okay, cool. So I think stamps.com does UPS now too. I think
Okay.
it started with just literally just stamps. And then like you said, now you can get the labels for packages
Yeah.
I think it does UPS also. So what happens when somebody orders from overseas? Let's say I don't know how your fee structure is set up, but
Hmm.
let's say we go to one of your campaigns and go
Hmm.
ahead and sign up as funding it, which is not the same as pre-ordering. There's a
Yeah.
difference between funding
Yeah.
and pre-ordering. What if somebody in if uh let let's say somebody in New Jersey down the street from you orders it,
Hmm.
and then somebody in Tokyo orders it. Um, do they have to pay additional postage, or do you have to pay that?
This is the part that might ruffle some people's feathers. Uh, we have them pay for it because it's like if you're buying a product. Like let's say if I'm
Mhm.
buying something from overseas from Disney Japan, like they're not going to work with me on the shipping, because they're a
No,
corporation, I'm
no.
a little guy. But we like what Joe and I, Joe Sontag, what we do is we'll kind of do a give and take with the shipping. Like we'll take a bite out of the cost a little bit because it's still coming out of our pockets to a degree, and it's coming out of Europe. We want to help you out the best we can. Now, we can't always do that because we don't have all the money in the world, and some people get it confused that because they live in, let's say Canada, they might
Hmm.
believe that they deserve more. And I wish I could give you more, but I'm not going to.
Right.
Like an extra a
Right.
t-shirt. Like I don't make t-shirts yet, so I can't give you a t-shirt that's not created or give you extra books. One, it's not fair. And that again, that's just not the way the world works when it comes to buying a product. Uh so we're going to do our best, but we do have it kind of calculated to where it should be going. Like I know Australia is really expensive, like really expensive. So
Yeah,
we,
that's
we try to help
crazy.
them out. Yeah. But yeah, it's we do our best and we're not perfect. We're just trying to get our book out there to everybody as we can the best possible way. And we will do our best to work with you. But sometimes things are out of our hands because again, insulin's not cheap. So
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and I consumers these days they should well know. Anybody that lives in Japan is going to know darn well, yes, if you're ordering something from the US, it's going to cost more. My
mhm.
wife's from Japan, so
Oh
we like
nice,
to
nice.
order some things. Yeah, we order some foods in particular from Japan that you just simply can't get here, and it's insanely expensive. So the shipping,
But
and
it's
and
well
yeah,
worth it in
there's
the end.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. And best thing to do is actually just go there and bring an empty suitcase and fill it up and bring it back with
Yes,
you. But
yes, yes.
anyway, so listen, Sean, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm wondering what your future plans are above and beyond type 1. Then I'm going to briefly ask you about the story. And
Okay.
then also if you've got any broad open-ended advice that you could give to people. So
Sure,
so
sure.
first, what are your future plans? Is there going to be a type 1 part 2?
Yes, so I have the story planned out for the first 3 volumes, and I have a broad range of where I want to go in the future, like kind of sprinkled out. But again, this is a business, and
Hmm.
this is the selfish part. If I'm not making money, as far as if I'm losing an enormous amount of money, I'll have to put it on hold and try something new. But if it's successful in the aspect that I'm not losing much money, I'm going to continue this book as long as I can because this is one of the first serious products I had created, if you will. So, like from being a kid to where I am now, and there's so much I want to do with this book as far as getting it into the hands of kids with type 1 diabetes, because I feel it'll give them a great escapism from when we have our bad days of yo-yo levels, give them the experience of want to learn how to create and draw or write themselves and a whole facet new world that they could learn and just be entertained when they're having a bad day. And that's my main goal with this book, is to get it in the hands of as many kids as I am. And I'm just kind of started working with JDRF Illinois. I was just in Chicago this past weekend for JDRF Type 1 Nation Summit in Chicago, and that was great. I taught a class, the basic demo to kids on how to draw Streez's head, and a lot of kids kind of really got into it. And after the demo, they came up to me asking me questions and what I should do, like what products should I do to create. And like I was saying, paper and pencil at first,
Nice,
go from there. And
nice.
the joy from seeing their happiness was amazing, just because I created a
Hmm.
comic book about myself and what we go through. And my one of my contacts emailed me yesterday saying she was seeing the kid, like I'll give them posters to the kids that came to the seminar and hung out. They were running around with the posters, pretending they're streets and having their little adventures. And she thought it was the coolest and brought a smile to her face. And I brought a smile on my face. And I'm like, I'm doing something good, man. Like, this is cool. Like, this is what it's all about. Because I remember being a kid, getting into comic books and just the enjoyment, bringing myself to these fantastical worlds. And if I could help in any minor way, I'm doing a good job. I won already. I like to selfishly say I won, and
There you go.
I took that shot.
Okay, nice. Now, somebody can actually go on to one of your marketing sites
Yeah,
and donate a book to a kid, right?
yeah. So we have this tier right now. We're rewording it because
Mhm.
we have a tier where you could donate a book to a child with juvenile diabetes, and there's no
Mhm.
shipping on it. Like normally it's 25 a book, plus then you add on $10 shipping. We don't have the $10 shipping. So what we gotta do is we gotta reword it. So let's say you buy that tier, you're donating 2 books, and then we'll give a kid an exclusive trading card. But as a thank you to you for spending your hard-earned money and believing in me and wanting to put a smile on these kids' faces, we're gonna send you an exclusive metal trading card. And we're going to be announcing the
Oh,
artist soon.
nice.
I don't know who the artist is. A good friend of ours, Rick Saylor,
Hmm.
is not doing it behind my back, but he's doing it because he believes in me. He believes in this project. He believes that this book is something great for kids. That within the next few weeks we're going to announce that, and I'll probably have to make a new tier to tell people that buy one, get two, and a free metal trading card as a thank you. So
Okay.
and that's our main goal, is to at least get 100. I think we're at like 15 between Indiegogo and Fund My Comic, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is Type One. But I'm going to be out there, fighting the good fight, and because I believe this is not just message aside of what it is. I think this is a great comic book. Like
Okay.
I think it's fun. I think you're gonna be entertained, and I think people are gonna be surprisingly shocked on how the book looks once it's all finally said and done between my art and my colorist Dan Kemp.
Okay. Now, I need you to send me the links to your fundraisers because we're going to
Okay.
put them right down here below. And I am familiar with Rick Saylor, and I think we should put a link to his socials as well. So
Oh, sure.
anybody watching, yeah, anybody watching this on YouTube, just go down to the description, hit the links, and you'll find where you can go ahead and back this.
Mhm.
Go ahead and back Type One. Go to the links below, check it out. You may very well find something that you will love. Now, Sean, tell us everything about the story. I want
Everything.
all of the details. Certainly not. Does everyone die in the end? Certainly not, right? what
No, no,
what is
no.
what's something that a backer is going to enjoy?
The whole book. Type One is an action
The whole
adventure
thing.
tale with real life implications that faces off terrors from the past. All right. My main
Oh,
character, Thomas DeHart, who's also our hero Strees, behind the mask. He's the caretaker of his nephew Aaron, who seems to be the one taking care of his uncle. I'll tell you a funny story how I came up with the name of Thomas Aaron afterwards. He's taking care of his uncle as a type 1 diabetic. But we're gonna find out what connection the mysterious type 1 armors have to the 9 Lords of the Night and how the past can save our future. So according to the Mayan calendar, December 12th of 2012, the world was supposed to end. From misdecoded translations was what we believed, but that wasn't the case at all. While it was a warning, it was something entirely different and much more severe that was believed. Thoth of the Anunnaki created the Mesoamerican pyramids as not only conductors and regeneration chambers, but also prisons for false gods such as the Nine Lords of the Night. So it gets into the whole South American type of history and lore of the Mayans, the Aztecs, and all the other uh, ancestral natives like that predated them, and it might be a little conspiracy theories, but it's a fun romp, and I got Sasquatches in there, and you'd be like, Sean, why do you have Sasquatches in this comic book that has deals with Mayans and Aztecs? I'm like, well, it's my comic book, but it's my love of Harry and the Hendersons meets the old cartoon Dino Riders. So if you put those together, you'll kind of see how I created my characters, the Paramus, which are my Sasquatches. But it's a fun romp. It's bombastic. It's in your face. It's everything that I love about 90s, 80s, and 90s comics and cartoons, and I think you will too. So
Okay. Awesome. Sold. I can't wait to see it. Sean,
thank you.
stick around.
I will.
I'm going to take this out. And because I want to hear that story. So, folks, for those of you that have watched or listened to this, thank Sean Arentz for his time, because he just provided some education to those of us that may have a dream and goal to do something that he's doing. And he didn't have to spend his time to do that, and share some very core secrets of success in creating and marketing your own comic. So check out his links below. Go back, type one. Thank Sean for his time. And it sounds like to me that we have something coming up to look forward to that we're going to love. So, Sean, any best final piece of advice? Somebody out there, some kid like you at age 11 is watching this 5 years from now. Um, do you have any best piece of advice that you could give someone that wants to be like Sean?
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm going to go back to what Rob Liefeld told me so many years ago. You just got to do it because nobody else is going to do it for you besides you. You're going to be your own best advocate and get what you want out of life because it's what you want to do. Don't back down. Don't let anybody deter your dreams, your goals, your aspirations. Live this life the best you can because we only got one. And we're going to find out a good message about that within the pages of Type 1.
Okay, awesome. You love what you do, don't you?
I love it. I'm very blessed. I get to make funny. I may get to make funny comic books. It's fun. It's fun. It's good times.
Okay. Awesome, Sean. It is really nice to meet you. And
Pleasure.
thank you so much for being willing to do this.
Thank you.
And let's definitely keep in touch.
Of
You
course.
were absolutely a creative to keep an eye on. That's for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
So, yeah, great to have been able to meet you. And
Mm.
everyone, check out the links below and go back, type one. Sounds like it's something that we're all gonna love. Have a great day, Sean.
Adios.
Sayonara.